Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Efficiency Equation podcast. This is episode 11, and it's a special episode and something that we're really excited about because for the first 10 times, for the first 10 shows, we talked about product being manufactured inside the building, inside the facilities. But today, for this episode, what we're going into is what happens when we start moving liquid into trucks, into rail cars, and moving them away from the facilities. And so again, this will have a bunch of implications on MES systems and processes. So really excited to dive into this topic today. How are you doing, Konstantin and Eugene?
Great.
Well, all right. Well, let's kick it off. Initially, you said that this is one of Eugene's favorite topics. Is that the case? So why do you like transportation so much?
It's interesting. There's very interesting problems to solve, and there's certain pace to it that you have to be quick to react. Just different challenging issues. So. Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and to be honest, I think our venture into the whole MES, TMS systems started kinda with the transportation piece many years ago. So it was something that presented a challenge right from the beginning. So.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. Would you say it's kind of a different beast or a different animal from the previous topics that we talked about? So
yes, it's definitely a different beast, but it does have very many common angles to look at. For example, the OEE metrics, right? You could say, well, it's about efficiency of the equipment, right? So not so much loading or shipping the trucks out or rail cars, but under a certain angle, under a certain viewpoint, you could come up with a very sensible OEE metric for performing your loadouts. So it's not really all that different. You can consider your loadout, whether it's a truck or a rail car, it's just another piece of equipment. And if you can put some targets on it, such as how long things take at different stages of the loadout, you can definitely measure that whole process from the perspective of OEE and provide improvements as you go along. So there are commonalities for sure.
Sense. Okay, so Konstantin, what is so special about loading trucks when it comes to liquids in bulk quantities?
You have different types of shipping methods. You have warehouse-free loading, and then you have the warehouse loading. And we work with both setups. So in the warehouse-free loading, you have materials or products coming out of the manufacturing plant going directly into the trucks or rail cars and being shipped to their customers. And with the warehouse loading, you have single order loading where you might have a large order that has a bunch of stuff and it's all assembled together on a pallet, and then might be multiple pallets, and those pallets are loaded into the box truck. Or it could be a multi-order shipment where you have orders going to different customers, and they all are also assembled on pallets and then staged somewhere so that that whole group of products can be loaded for a single shipment. And so each of those types of shipping, they have their own nuances.
What are some of the common challenges with loading?
Well, there are many different challenges that you could look at, and it really depends on what type of loading you're talking about, whether it's a truck or a rail car, and what kind of truck, if it's a tank wagon or if it's a box truck with pallets in it. They all have their own nuances and their own challenges. One of the challenges that is external to the facility would be the arrival of trucks or rail cars on time as scheduled. In a fast-paced facility, it can be very important to have trucks and rail cars be there to be loaded in a very specific time window, because of the pace that the facility is running at. If the trucks are being loaded in and out, in and out, in and out, then even a 15 or 20-minute delay by a truck coming in might create a bottleneck in the schedule, and then things have to be adjusted and turned around, and nobody likes to do that. Even though it's manageable, usually if you have proper systems in place, you would be able to do that. But it's definitely the one of the biggest challenges to make sure that the trucks and the rail cars arrive at the facility as scheduled, to make sure that the pace of the facility is maintained. That would be one big thing that's external to the facility. Internal to the facility would be loading wrong product or wrong quantity of product, right? That happens. Quantity is probably a little bit more frequent occurrence. So it's very easy, I guess, to misjudge and load too much. When you load too little, you normally can fix it by loading a little more. But when you load too much, usually it's not easy to remove the product from the container, uh, given that you didn't overflow the container, which is a whole different mess of a game that you have to now clean up. So those things happen, obviously, and when you deal with them, you're wasting time, you're wasting product, so it doesn't look great on your OEE or any other metrics. So that's a challenge for sure. Konstantin, you want to chime in?
Yeah, there are also requirements in the food and beverage industry to have proper washout tickets. So the trucks that arrive, before they arrive at a facility, they have to go through washout procedures and then bring the proof. They have to bring that paperwork that shows that they were completely cleaned. And still, the manufacturers would look at what was the prior cargo. And there is this notion in the food and beverage industry that even though you washed out your tank, depending on what the prior cargo was, they will not load their product into this. So they have certain prior cargo types that automatically reject this truck to avoid contamination. And so what may happen is they would have missing paperwork, or the truck arrives not properly washed, or they thought that this truck that would arrive actually is a good truck with a proper prior cargo, but then it's not. So they have those types of issues. And then also, because in the food industry, you have to make sure that everything you're carrying hasn't been tampered with. There are seals put on these trucks when something is loaded. And so seals are put in multiple places where there are different ports where you can offload the product. So there's a very strict control over that. And there may be issues with seals missing and seals being forgotten, any kind of stuff that goes wrong. In facilities where there's manual tracking of those seals, those issues are more frequent. So this is where the automation helps make sense of stuff. But even then, even when you are automated to the nth degree and you track the seals by scanning them with barcodes and all that, every once in a while something happens where just the mere sequence of events aligns against you, and so something happens there, and there's always room for improvement in those processes. And I'd say additionally, you have the quality control. So again, in those industries where you have to make sure that whatever you're loading and sending to your customer has been tested right there in that vehicle, whether it is a truck or a rail car. After you load it, you have to make sure that you test it and there's no contamination, and you provide the paperwork along with the shipment saying, yeah, it's here are the tests we performed. Sometimes you may have a bottleneck in the lab. And so when the whole operation is meant to work like clockwork and each truck is supposed to be loaded quickly, that could be an issue because now the lab might be holding up the subsequent loads.
And I have another one I could add to this list. There is an issue sometimes with the customer. So we just talked about the carrier, right, not being on time. That's one thing that you cannot really control all that much because it's external to you as a manufacturer. Then you have internal issues, right? When you are actually making the product, loading the product, taking care of all the paperwork, making sure the product isn't contaminated in any way, that the seals are properly matched with the paperwork and the truck, and the quality is right. But then let's say you put the product on the road, right? So you have a tank wagon going to the customer, and then you receive an information, either a call or an email from the customer saying, oh my goodness, we cannot accept this product because we don't have storage. That happens, and it happens more frequently than you think. Because we're talking about bulk, right? So it's not just say, okay, let's find a place for a couple of drums where to put them. It's a whole tanker of product. So you really need to make sure that you do have the space. And sometimes it goes, that the truck is on the road and the customer says, well, we can't accept it. So what do? That's a common challenge. And again, if you have proper processes and a software system in place, there is a thing that you can do that's called rerouting. So you could say, do we have another customer that would accept this particular product because they buy this product anyway, right? And you can search through the orders and see, okay, yes, there is a customer that takes this product and they have an order with us, potentially that may be a day or 2 or 3 away from this particular order for this customer, right? And you can contact that other customer of yours and say, hey, would you be able to take this order? And if so, you can do the whole process of rerouting in the system that takes care of all the documents, all the records, making sure that now that tanker that's on the road is actually rerouted to another location, going to the customer instead of coming back to the plant, offloading it into a tank back at your plant, wasting all the time and money that comes with it. That's a challenge that happens, and it's very good if you have a solution for it.
I can imagine if I'm somebody who's running manufacturing at a plant and I just listen to this list that you guys have put here, I feel very uncomfortable, and sometimes you'd be like ripping up previously healed wounds. So the big question is, how do you go about fixing these problems? Where do you even start? And what's your general recommendation?
So this is where you would greatly benefit from having integrated MES and TMS systems, because you then have to look at it by the type of loading we just discussed. So when you talk about warehouse free loading, integrated systems enable just-in-time manufacturing, where you are making product just before you know that carrier, let's say the truck, is going to arrive to pick up your order. The planners calculate some time back. They issue the work orders. The product is made, and then the truck comes in and picks it up, bypassing the warehouse altogether. And this is now, from what we're seeing, it's gotten down to a science where it can really be done at scale with a very short lead time. Of course, to make that happen, you have to have scheduled appointments for the trucks to arrive. And then this brings up a whole other game where the carriers and the manufacturers start to ask questions. Well, if something is late, whose fault is it? Is it the carrier that arrived late and now we are having a jam here? Or is it because we were not ready and we didn't make the product in time and we're delaying the carrier? And so as this whole game becomes more advanced, they start paying demurrage fees to each other for holding up. So if the manufacturer holds up the carrier, they pay to the carrier. If the carrier is coming late without a good reason, they pay the manufacturer. So there is that. But altogether, when you think about scale and high throughput facilities, having integrated systems where your manufacturing is taking care of that particular order just when it needs to do it. And then you have everything connected together. So transportation management systems take care of their part. But then in the MES space, you have quality where the lab goes in, does their quality sample analysis, and they don't need to go and tell anybody anything physically. The results come in right through the system, and the loaders that take care of the loads, they see, oh, okay, the sample has been approved. Now we can ship, so everything begins to work very, very quickly. And then with rail cars, it's a slower world. The rail cars in themselves, just by their nature, are a lot slower than tank wagon trucks in terms of bringing them in and bringing them out. There's coordination with the railroad companies. But still, what we're seeing, companies are able to leverage this warehouse-free loading as long as they have the right rail cars at the facility, and they can issue those work orders to fill them, to make the product and fill the rail cars and send them on their way. So with the integrated systems in the warehouse-free world, you take care of getting rid of all that wasted time in between production, the loaders, and your lab. Then you got the packaged goods. Eugene, you want to talk about the packaged goods side?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about packaged goods can be dealt with in the warehouse free way, where you package your containers such as drums or totes right before they actually go out the door. That is one model to deal with it, just like you deal with bulk trucks and rail cars. Or you could have warehouse loading, which is basically you making the product to stock in the warehouse. And then when the trucks come in to pick up orders, the actual stock in the warehouse is assigned to the orders at that time. So it's not pre-packaged for a specific order. It's packaged in general terms for any customer that buys that particular product. That can be beneficial sometimes for a very fast-moving product, where you're going to be selling it in large quantities, and you do not have a lot of lead time from customers that provide you with good, stable knowledge of when they're going to take the product. You just know they will be taking it. Maybe they'll take it 2 or 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a month, but you know that they will be taking it, and you have a lot of turnover with that product. Then you could potentially say, okay, we're going to make the product to stock so that we put it in the warehouse. It doesn't matter which customer is going to pick it up. We know they will be picked up. So we will keep a somewhat manageable amount of that product in stock to make sure that we fill those orders on the shorter lead time and quickly get them out the door. You could potentially have full truckloads, which is called FTL. That's when you have a truck loaded with product for one order for one customer. Usually that goes out the door. It's pretty much treated as almost as if it's a bulk order because you get a lot of product for one customer. It potentially could be multiple products on that same order, but it's termed full truckload because you're loading the complete truck. It comes in empty, you load it completely full. Depending on the weight, obviously, of the product, you could be loading somewhere between 20 and 26 pallets, depending on the size of the truck and the overall weight of the product. If you have proper systems in place, they will tell you whether or not the order you're about to load is going to potentially have an issue with the transportation department, such as making the truck heavier than is allowed by law. Things like that, of course, can be facilitated by a proper TMS and MES systems working together, so that you don't have issues with trucks coming back and again wasting time, because now your truck is not on the road, it's coming back to you. You have to offload potentially a pallet or two. Now you're shorting the order. Either you have to send another less than truckload a truck over to the customer with the remaining pallets, or do some other adjustments. It just creates extra churn and potentially unhappy customer. Nobody wants that. So if you have the good TMS/MES system in place, or two systems separately but working together and as integrated whole, then you can deal with these issues, and you can be prepared with all the QC paperwork that needs to come along with the truck, with the bill of ladings, with packing slips or packing lists that show everything that's loaded on the truck. Another big facilitator in this case would be having electronic signatures. For example, when the truck driver has to sign, they sign electronically, and the signature is applied to all the documents where it needs to be shown. Instead of signing every piece of paper, there could be, I don't know, 20 pages. Again, saving time, making things run more efficiently. You can also have multiple orders on the same truck going to different customers. That's also possible. You create a shipment, you put all the custom orders together, and potentially give the driver a list of addresses of the customers that they need to be delivered to. Or it could be a DC, distribution center, that all the orders go to, and then from that DC go to their customers, or to another DC. All kinds of configurations. All of that is much easier to handle if you have proper tools in place.
Sounds straightforward, reasonable.
Very.
How many trucks can a facility load in a 24-hour period?
This depends on the plant capacity and the number of loading bays or loading areas that they have. And from what we see working with bulk loading side, they usually have at least two loading bays or loading areas, and the trucks can be loaded in less than an hour. So the facilities where this is down to a science, they can load between 40 and 45 minutes. And so you can imagine they have this traffic of trucks coming in and leaving, coming in and leaving, and they have to make sure that everything is done in just the right amount of time. And when you have integrated systems, that helps you streamline the process of loading and give you the transparency into it, so that you can address any deviations from that process. And then when you look at packaged goods, it's a function of how much they're loading, but usually one pallet can be moved into a truck in 2.5 minutes with a forklift. So if they have a full truckload of, let's say, 26 pallets, that takes 65 minutes to load, but usually it's not a full truckload. And so then it also takes less than an hour. But if you are dealing with everything on paper, now that could take several hours if you have to go look for things. And so when you have integrated systems, they help you with organizing everything from staging to loading, and just making sure that it goes in and out. So that's the beauty of it.
Exactly. And so you mentioned inspection forms and seals. Do integrated systems help eliminate the paperwork in this area?
Yes. In fact, in matter of fact, that they don't just help; they make it actually workable. Because doing this by hand is a disaster. It creates a lot of mismatches, lost paperwork, and a lot of churn that can be easily avoided if you have systems in place. Because the systems in place, they will deliver a repeatable, a reliable process that does not need any creative thinking on the spot, trying to come up with a solution for things. Now, sometimes it may be necessary regardless, but the fewer situations that you have where you have to rely on your creative abilities in the process that runs fast, the better off you're going to be. If the process is well designed and the system helps you to go through all of the different stages of the process, starting with making sure the product is made on time, the carrier arrives on time, the product is ready to be loaded on time. It means it's tested for quality and it's approved in the storage where it's at. Making sure that the truck is fully inspected and properly washed, and prior cargo in the truck is acceptable with the product that you're loading it into it now. And the quality sample from the truck is taken and it's still showing good quality. And all the seals are applied to the truck properly and matching the paperwork that you're going to provide to the driver, and that the truck leaves the facility on time and not overweight, so it doesn't have to come back from an inspection station and saying, well, let's waste some more time by offloading some of the product. Making sure that as it goes to its destination, it's tracked and it arrives on time at the customer, so the customer's happy. All of those things done by hand, it's very hard to do. Let's just say it politely, it's very hard to do. If you have a system that helps you through those stages of the process, then you're definitely going to be better off. Now, if your system is advanced and it integrates a functionality of a TMS system and MES system and provides you with those tools in a more advanced and still user-friendly way, then you're going to be even better off with that. So absolutely.
Eugene, how about
inspection.
spreadsheets? Yeah, my question is spreadsheet, because you talked about paper.
Yes,
but
you can do inspection forms on spreadsheets. You can do seals on spreadsheets if you want, but that basically provides no validation. It's slow. It can be lost or overwritten by mistake. There is no proper flow and validation of data in processes. So Excel is just it's also, you can think of Excel as a paper, right? It's just paper on the screen, but it's still paper. A system isn't paper because there's so much more to the system and the tracking of things and validation of things and making sure that you are made aware of the events that happened that you may not have known otherwise. And the system will tell you, hey, by the way, this process is running late. So you might not be able to load it on time when the truck arrives. Or it could say, hey, the truck is late. It's supposed to be here already, and it's not. Things like that you may not know unless the system actually runs this analysis of situation in the background and tells you proactively if things happen to be going astray. Your question was about the forms and seals, and in fact, that is one of the challenges that we talked about in the beginning of this conversation. Seals especially, because seals are very important. It's more like a key or certificate that you hand off to your customer, right? Meaning that from when you loaded the truck and sealed it, it hasn't been tampered with and it arrived at the customer's facility just the way you loaded it. That means every inlet or outlet in the container of the truck, the tanker or rail car, even box trucks, if it's a full truckload, it has to be sealed. And each seal has a number, and the numbers must match the paperwork. So you have to make sure that seals are tracked in the system. The numbers of the seals on the paperwork actually match the seals that you put on that truck or rail car or whatever it is. Without a system, it's very hard to do. Some trucks may have 26 different inlets and outlets that you have to seal. Imagine trying to match up the numbers on the seals to the numbers you wrote down on the paperwork by hand or even in Excel. It's a visual match. It's not gonna be easy, right? One seal may be not so bad if you're sealing the box track, right, with full of pallets, and you're sealing the back door of the truck, and it's just one seal. Okay, maybe one seal is not so bad. You're probably not going to make too many mistakes comparing that. But if you have 20 or even 10, it's not going to be easy. So a system that helps you with that, making sure that it's all tracked and it's all matching, is definitely a plus, and definitely improves your customer satisfaction and your time management.
One thing I want to add, bringing it back to the paperwork part of the question, is that when you have integrated MES and TMS systems, you eliminate all internal paperwork on the transportation management side, and you generate paperwork physically only for those documents that need to be generated and given to the driver so that the driver can go on the road with physical copies of the minimum required documents that are necessary. But all the other stuff is taken care of electronically. So the integration aspect between the systems actually helps with that, because then as they do the loading, the information comes back to the central system. It knows that now that bill of lading that we printed physically for the driver, the actual recipient doesn't really care about getting that physically. They get an emailed copy of it right away as soon as the truck leaves the manufacturing facility. So a lot of documents are sent to the customers like that electronically. And so having those systems help eliminate that paperwork.
By the way, what Eugene said right there should be put on a t-shirt. Spreadsheets are just paper on a screen. So
All right, I agree.
That belongs on a t-shirt. Okay. So what information do these systems allow other company staff to see during the typical day?
So the solution we work with provides real-time data, and think of loading status that not only the loaders get to see, but also the quality lab and the production planners and whoever needs to see it in the logistics department. They have their outbound shipping schedule, and they see for the different orders or different shipments what's currently being loaded. And in addition to that, there is this very robust system of customer notifications that sends the customers status updates saying, hey, your order is being worked on, your order is being filled. And then as that order is loaded and sent, there's another notification going out to them. So this is not only that the integrated systems can show the real-time status updates to the people that need to see it at the plant, but they can also inform the customers about what's coming. And then in addition to that, we have the OEE calculated for the loadouts. And just like Eugene said in the beginning, it's very important to make sure that trucks and rail cars and all of that leaves the facility efficiently. And besides OEE, we also talk about OTIF, on time and full. And this is something that customer service and logistics departments can see. And the interesting part about integration there is that the integration between the systems goes a step further, because for us to be able to show on time and in full, the in full part, yes, that's what we loaded. So we know that information in the facility. But the on time part depends on when that particular order has been delivered. And the delivery is made by the carrier. So now the integration goes into the next step of integrating between the MES TMS and the carrier to get that information back and know when it was physically delivered. So one of the technologies used for that is having EDI, where you have feeds with carriers and you get that information back. But that is something important. So in terms of what people are able to see, you have internal staff seeing the real-time status updates. You have customers on as needed basis. So that's all configurable, who sees what updates. You have your OEE, you have your OTIF, and then the ERP system gets the updates when the loading is finished through this integration. Now the ERP can take care of the invoicing of the order. Eugene, have I missed anything?
No, I think this is a good overall run through the typical day. So yes, load it out, measure the efficiency, make sure that it's on time and in full. Notify ERP to go ahead and invoice the customer when the order is loaded and out the door. Make sure the customer's happy, make sure the order is going on the road or rail car, whatever it is, in proper pacing, which is helped by EDI, data interchange. All of those things are valid. Yes, they create overall efficiency for loading and making sure that your customer base is happy.
And how is this similar? How is it different than when I order stuff from Amazon as an individual?
If you buy anything on Amazon, you will get notification of the order fulfillment status. And this works in a very similar fashion. So when you have integrated systems, you're able to send status updates whenever you want, basically. So again, from what we see, there are different levels of configurability where some customers of the people that we work with prefer to get that full transparency. And so when the order comes up, and you may basically get notifications at earlier stages or at later stages. And then as the order is being fulfilled, you're getting notifications just like you would with Amazon. Sometimes you get that we received your order, now somebody's working on your order, and now it's being shipped. It's the same thing. You get that full transparency. And the beauty of it in the business to business world is that giving that transparency allows companies to have smaller and more efficient customer service department, because you don't have to spend that extra time on phone calls and follow-up emails to let your customers know what's happening with their shipment. So it can be very similar. There are some other ones that prefer not to get all those details, but still get some general notifications. So this is where that's similar. But then if I compare to my real life purchasing experience, I would say that Amazon is probably one of the best, if not the best, in terms of making sure that the quality of the order fulfillment process is there. What I have experienced very recently, and it's been consistent actually with the big box stores that are not Amazon, when you order something that needs to be shipped, companies nowadays show you, oh, here's your order status, and you can come and see some kind of form of order tracking, except if you pay close attention, they don't live up to the dates that they themselves promise. And then when you start asking questions about, oh, where's my order? Should have been here a long time ago and nothing arrived. And then you talk to their customer service and they look at their system and they can't tell you anything about it other than what you see on that tracker. So you get a lot of businesses jumping into this space trying to show you updates, but it's the quality of doing that differs. And so when we draw the parallel between business to business deliveries like this, what we are seeing is, at least with the solutions that we work with, there is that quality that if you get notification saying that your truck is arriving late, it's really arriving late. If you get the notification that the truck has shipped, it has shipped. And in between each notification, the system always knows where that order is in terms of its fulfillment. So there's no magic. There's nothing lost in that. So that's the one thing. And again, we've seen some stories on the web about people getting excited when the pizzerias started offering these real-time trackers of deliveries. And you have these big names like Domino's and Papa John's and Pizza Hut offering the status tracker on the mobile app right now. And you can actually see why they're doing this. They're trying to capture the market by providing a better experience to the customer. So if they're focused on having that visibility as an enhanced experience, why not do the same in business to business everywhere? If you add that transparency, it's not just that you don't have to have this large department of people answering phone calls about the order status, but it's also the experience of your customer that is now enhanced by that. So that's where I see the similarities. And of course, we can say that in the consumer market, if that delivery doesn't happen on time, what's the consequence? The consequence is minimal. It's just whoever didn't get their pizza stays hungry for longer and then have to find something else. If I ordered a snowblower, I just don't get my snowblower for a week and get it whenever. In case of these kinds of sales, you're talking about if that truck doesn't come in on time, you may be stopping somebody's production cycle because they depend on that raw material they're expecting from you. So in the B2B world, it's much more precise. And then if there is an unexplained delay, then you may be in that contractual relationship where somebody has to compensate the other party for causing the delay. So it's much more strict and more like clockwork.
Funny story. Since we're talking about home use and goods from online versus B2B, remember how we mentioned that sometimes it could happen that the wrong product is loaded into the truck, let's say. Again, usually doesn't happen if you have proper systems in place. It probably happens more often if you don't, if you use paper or something similar to track your business, your loadouts. A funny story that does happen, even though, like Konstantin said, Amazon is definitely one of the best shippers of products out there for home use for sure. I had to order a toilet valve for my mother. And we received pink slippers instead. Now, my mother was able to use the slippers because these are pink slippers for women, and she said, "Okay, I kind of like them. I'm not going to return them. I'm going to use them." But of course, we couldn't use them to fix the toilet, so we had to order another toilet valve and hope that actually this time it's a toilet valve that comes in and not some pink jacket or something else. Luckily, the second time it was the valve and we fixed the toilet, but things happen. And even at such a clockwork type of operation like Amazon, weird things happens, and sometimes you just have to laugh it off. But of course, when it's a full truck of wrong product that arrives at your facility, it's not as funny as pink slippers versus toilet valve, obviously.
Yeah, that is a cute little story that you'll keep on telling for a couple of years. And speaking of interesting situations, when you order a pair of headphones, it can get lost. And sometimes Amazon will tell you, sorry, it got lost and we have no idea what happened, so we'll just give you a refund. Now, what happens when it's 3,000 gallons of liquid that gets lost? Does that ever get lost?
So, not physically. Usually you don't lose a tanker truck or I must say the caveat is with box trucks. Yes, with box trucks, when you have less than full truckload, sometimes people steal product off of a pallet. That actually has happened. But when you have tanker trucks, they don't disappear. However, what you may see when people don't have good systems in place, and we're coming back to the whole manual paper processes discussion, is that your product may disappear on paper. And when is that important? That's important when you have an audit. And so years ago, yes, we've actually witnessed this where we spoke to a customer that did a lot of tracking on paper, and the auditors come around and say, oh, okay, so now show me this particular shipment, track it back to the raw materials. And then when they find the raw materials, trace it to the shipments that went out the door. And when they did that kind of audit, they came up a full rail car of product short. So you don't normally lose a rail car of product, but it wasn't fun for the people that had to explain why there was a rail car of product missing. So this is something that I will not forget ever, because that goes back to the conversation about manual paper processes versus having something in the system. Paperwork can be misplaced. Paperwork can be lost, especially when you have a file cabinet of stuff and you don't look at it every day. And then when the auditor comes, you have to come back to it, find the right paperwork to explain where everything is. So that's how you end up with losing a full rail car of something. It's a lot of product, and normally it shouldn't get lost. So having those integrated systems definitely helps to stay on top of things like that.
Another point for this one is that maybe the product doesn't get lost, but sometimes the product does get damaged. And it can either get damaged by mechanical force, such as maybe an accident or a shifted load while during transportation on the road, or with the loader, say if it's packaged goods and the forklift operator runs the forklift into the packaged goods, or maybe while driving it around the warehouse, hits a corner somewhere where they shouldn't done that. So there could be damage to the product. And if you have proper systems in place and proper processes in place, then potentially you can minimize the risk of some of the damages, such as the ones that can happen at your facility. And you can document them if you have proper software, proper process in place, making sure that when the truck is loaded, you have visual evidence of all packages being intact and in good shape. And then if any problems arise later on, as the customer reports back saying, we have a pallet that has 10 boxes on it that are damaged, you can provide the evidence from your side that all of the pallets that you loaded onto the truck are perfectly sound and no damage on them. Again, if you have proper systems in place, it becomes much more streamlined to work through that process to keep the customer happy. Potentially, this was maybe damaged in transit. That happens. Maybe the carrier has to take care of the damages. But that is something that's important, because doing it by hand, most likely you will end up paying for the damage regardless of who made the damage, right? So that's very important factor, to have everything in place that allows your business to be transparent and have evidence of good work.
Okay, and so for closing thoughts, do you have any recommendations for plant managers who want to improve their plant throughput and especially loading?
Yes. So this gets back to our conversations about the mindset. So, in terms of the mindset, I would say invest into transparency. It will increase your productivity and customer satisfaction, and it will reduce your costs. And integrated systems can streamline your operations and help you connect the people that do the loading with the people at the shop floor that make the product, with the people that supervise all of this, with the quality people that make sure that you send quality product out the door. And in the end, you get happier customers and your profitability increases. And there are different ways to go about it. You can certainly look at what you already have in your toolkit. But if you are talking about integrating multiple systems and getting different data all in one place, perhaps investing into a unified namespace would be helpful to you. So that's just something we want to put out there for people to look up. But yes, we work with solutions where some of it is already integrated, and we are also adding a unified namespace throughout the whole offering of integrated systems to make sure that the information is opened up to the users, opened up to the integrators, to the super users at the plant, whoever needs it, so that there is this transparency and ease of access to the data. I can't stress this enough. The data should be accessible easily to everybody. If you have it on paper, guess what? It's not easily accessible. It's only accessible to the person who knows in what filing cabinet it is. And even then, that person, when they have to access it, they have to look and flip through papers to find the right thing. So this is the time to get things right, to transform your business digitally and make sure that your full business is integrated.
Right. So when you have taken care of your production, when you have taken care of your raw material supplies, when you have taken care of your quality, when you have taken care of your overall equipment efficiency running a plant, what are you going to do without proper logistics? You got everything good, you got the product, but you can't ship it right. So obviously, logistics is super important. Without it, the other things don't matter. It kind of completes the circle of manufacturing, right? It loops back all the way to having the product shipped out the door, delivered to the customer, and customer being satisfied with your business for repeat business with your facility. So it's the final link in the chain to make sure the whole process is repeatable and something that can grow and something that can bring profits and reduce costs.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, that was episode 11 of the Efficiency Equation podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and stick around for what's to come 2 weeks from now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.